Hello, everyone. We are live. Today is Thursday, January 12th. And as you know, on Thursdays, I have my weekly interviews with usually women, but not exclusively women. And what I like to do is bring wonderful stories, awesome stories to you, and to let you know that your knowledge and your expertise can change and impact somebody's life. And that is one of the reasons why I have these interviews. So, but before I get into you meeting my guest, I would like to take a few minutes to please in the comment indicate if you're live with us. I do know that there are two live people. Please, um, above there is a stripe that says StreamYard. Click on that and give permission to StreamYard to use your name. Otherwise, you come across as a Facebook user, and we can't talk to you. Well, we can, but we can't use your name. And so that's a wonderful way to interact with us, with my guests and myself. And that way we know who you are. And if you don't want to comment or you don't want to participate in that way, you just want to react, then send us the hearts. We love a lot of hearts. And so do that if you don't want to, or if you can't comment. Um, Now, usually what I say, yes, one more thing. If you're live, put hashtag live, or if it's the replay, hashtag replay. Also, tell me where you're from, because I love to know where we are from. I am coming to you from Mexico. We will ask our guest where she is coming in from, and also, tell us what you do in the chat. So my guest and I actually met online. I have said it over and over again. You meet the nicest people online, and it's so true. And this particular guest of mine was being interviewed by a mutual friend. We have a mutual friend called Shika Kana. And when I heard her interview, I contacted Shika and I said, I want to interview her. I said, this what she does is fascinating, and it's something that we don't talk about. It's the theme of divorce. So we know many people have been through divorces. People suffer through divorces, as far as I'm concerned, and I, just like everybody else, did that. Even though I was a person that left the divorce, everybody suffers through the divorce, but there's little discussion that takes place around this subject. So that is why I wanted to invite my guest. So without further ado, let us meet Elisabeth. Hi, Elisabeth. Elisabeth, how are you?
I'm good.
Tell us
Hi,
where you're coming in
Lucy.
from.
I am in Stamford, Connecticut, and I see Elizabeth is also in Connecticut, our commenter here. So,
Absolutely.
so fun.
Absolutely. So Veronica is from Weatherford, Texas. Elizabeth is also from Connecticut. And Elizabeth is very excited to be here with us. So she is a forgiveness coach and empowerment coach as well. So these are very interesting, times
Yeah.
for coaching for you and Elizabeth. But divorce. Now, divorce is one of those words that is, people say, I'm getting a divorce or I went through a divorce, but that's all they ever talk about.
hmm
So, could you tell us, please? Do you have any idea, Elizabeth? I know you live in the U.S. Do you have any idea what the rate of divorce is in the U.S. at all?
So I'm not up to date on the divorce rate. I know that 50% ish was the last time I heard. And I also come from a Christian background, and that rate was pretty high. I think it was
Mhm,
over 50%. And you and I were previously talking a little bit
mhm.
about coming from a religious background and how impactful that is. So yeah, divorce is very, very prevalent in our society right
Right.
now.
Mhm.
And despite that, there's still so much pain and shame and stigma and so much work needs to be done around
Oh,
relationships and divorce.
you are absolutely right, Elizabeth. Elizabeth, could you, before we get into what you do as an
Sure.
empowerment coach, could you tell us a little bit about your life before you became a coach, please?
Sure. So, I got married in my early 20s.
Yeah.
I am a certified speech language pathologist. And so I was married young. I had my career. I had babies in my late 20s and early 30s. And, marriage was hard the whole time. And I was from a religious background. And so what I had heard and what I had seen was marriage is hard.
Mm.
Marriage is hard and it just, it takes work and love is a choice. And so when it was difficult for me, I was just like, okay, well, you're just not doing a very good job. And so you must need to work harder or you must need to do better. And I carried this burden of like, you're just not very good. And so you
Mhm.
need to do this. And I worked really hard to be better. I also came from a family where I did not have any examples of what a
Mhm.
healthy romantic relationship should be like. All of the adults in my life were divorced at least one time,
Wow.
some of them several times. And I thought, I'm not doing that. I'm not going to be a divorced person. And I was so like stuck on that idea that I just kept dragging myself through this marriage thinking it's my fault that it's not good. I
Mhm.
don't want to be a divorced person. And so I became very numb. I ended up kind of just being a robot is how I usually describe it. I was keeping myself and my sons alive. There was no excitement. There was no thriving happening. There was no connection, no love, no any of those things. I was just kind of like a phantom of who I truly am. And I made a connection with an old friend from high school, and he reminded me of, you haven't talked to someone in 20 years. You're like, oh my gosh, what are you doing now?
Sure.
How's life? What's going
Okay.
on? Remember when? And we did all of that. And I was like, oh my gosh, I used to be this thriving, exciting, energetic, driven woman, even in my teens. And I am none of those things now.
Yeah. What happened to me? Yeah.
I was shattered. I was like, who the heck am I now? Like, I'm nothing like how I was. That isn't to say that we don't evolve, but I hadn't evolved. I had disappeared.
Wow.
I had just completely disappeared. I was nothing. I was numb and empty. And it was from that space that I was like, I need to leave this relationship, despite what the church says, despite what I made a promise to myself, despite the promise I made at the altar. Like I get one life. I'm not going to keep doing something that is hurting me and my sons. And there's a lot of like conversation around, but your kids need you to be together. And I think the question really is, are you modeling to your children what a
Yeah.
healthy relationship should be like? I did not have that. And I refused to model poor communication, poor problem solving, poor romantic, habits. There were no romantic habits.
Right.
Poor romantic relationship to my sons who are observing their dad treat me poorly. And I was like, I'm raising husbands. My sons will be somebody's husband. And it is my responsibility to make sure that they have a good example of what that means.
Wow.
Um, and so I decided to leave. And kind of like you said, I left, but it was so hard and scary. And there was a lot of work around figuring out, what do I do now? What I knew for sure is I'm not doing what I did. Like, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm not going to be empty. I'm not going to run on, be a numb person. I'm not going to be a robot or a shell of myself. I'm going to find out who I am, and I'm going to be this version of me that is beautiful and thriving and growing. I don't know what that's going to look like yet, but I know that I'm going to do it.
Right. That's wonderful that you could get to that place. But, I want to go back to what you said about you grew up as a Christian, and
Hmm.
Elisabeth, who's joined us, can relate.
Yes, I see.
Christian guilt, because, and I know that my mother never divorced. I grew up as a Catholic, and my mother and father used to fight all the time. My mother wanted a divorce, and my father threatened her that she would get no money if she divorced him, and she had 7 kids. What was she going to do? I mean, she knew nothing but to be a mom.
Yes.
And so that never happened. So that's very sad as far as I'm concerned. But this guilt, and I don't think you have to be Christian to feel this guilt.
No.
What's behind this guilt when one gets a divorce? Because as you mentioned, you left the marriage. I left the marriage. I had some guilt, and it was as painful for me as it was for the person I was leaving. So can we talk a little bit about the guilt and where, you know?
Yeah. So for women in particular, I think it's very different. Um, I think first it starts with societal expectations. I think we live in a culture that sort of expects that marriage is going to work and that when you get married once. And, there are pockets of people who don't necessarily agree with that. But I think the
Right.
overarching theme has always been like marriage is once for all and you're supposed to do this thing.
Right.
And then I think the next layer of that is faith based backgrounds and not just Christianity, in Islam, this is also something that is strongly supported and in Judaism as well, depending on what level of Judaism you practice. The religious communities really encourage couples to like work it out. This is supposed to be what you do. And in biblical times, it's like you become one. You are one with this person now, and you can't just leave them. And this is where it's hard, but it's work came in. Like, of course
Right.
it's hard. And so we lean on religious texts and religious leaders to sort of explain to us how we have to be better. What happens is when we're not better, or when we don't meet the expectations that people are saying we have to meet, we feel guilty.
Yeah.
Instead of
It's
reevaluating.
cultural.
Yes, it is very deep in the
Rooting
culture.
cultural.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so we feel guilty because I can't do what is expected of me.
Right.
There's this expectation, and when we can't meet them, we feel horrible about that.
Right. Exactly.
And as women, I think we carry that burden more than men do. And like your mom's experience, which is so sad, I've had several clients with the same experience. Now we live in different times,
Right.
so women working is an acceptable part of society now, and
Right.
having your own career. And so many women are out there making their own careers and working and hustling so that they don't have to feel trapped in a relationship that is damaging or abusive.
Right. Exactly.
But even the women that I know that left still feel bad and have to do a lot of personal work to release society and religious and personal, even the expectations they set for themselves.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I just, Patty Sanders is joining us here, and she says, yes, the guilt is something that you have to work through. It's so
Yes.
important to work through the baggage before you get into another relationship. And how true is that? Oh my God. Oh my
Yes, Patty's so right. And with my clients, that is something we work on because they're like, how do I know I can trust somebody again?
God.
And my question is, do you trust yourself? We need to start with that because we feel guilty and we feel shame and we feel bad about ourselves. And I'm broken and I messed up. And so we need to heal who we are and how we show up before we can start building that connection and then knowing what it should be like and how we
Right.
want to be in those spaces. Thanks for saying that, Patty. That's really true.
Also, what you said about your sons, children are always watching their parents, and they don't say anything, but they watch their parents and they imitate their parents. And it's so important. And you don't have to say anything, they just know,
Nope.
they feel it. So I'm sure that had a great impact on you.
It was huge. And it was one of the things, it's kind of the opposite of what I hear a lot of women say, but, your broken family and your children need your parents together. And, my youngest son is a lot like his dad.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was very little and he was imitating a lot of the disrespectful and hurtful
Oh,
behaviors that his dad was using towards me. And I thought,
oh no.
oh, no, 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 no. We cannot. This is unacceptable. It's funny because my mother-in-law, she passed away a while ago, but she was a beautiful human. And she would always say, Liz, I'm so sorry. I tried so hard,
Oh wow.
and in that space and time, I was like, oh, don't worry. Like, it's fine. No big deal. But in hindsight, I thought, oh my gosh, this is what she was talking
Right.
about, that her son showed up and imitated behaviors he was seeing and she could not rectify them. And so when I
Right.
saw my son doing these things, I thought, this is not acceptable behavior. And this is not how you treat your mom. And it's absolutely not how you're going to treat other women and humans, anybody.
Right.
And so that was really a catalyst for me to like
Absolutely.
do the
True.
thing I needed to do.
Absolutely. So how did your children actually? Patty's asking a good question here, or she's making a statement. It's important for kids to go through the healing process. So how did you do that with your children yourself?
As a speech pathologist, as an educator, I have a lot of background knowledge on developmentally appropriate stages and how children receive things. And so I did a lot of research plus my professional expertise. And, I came up with a plan on how I was going to explain to them that we were going to get a divorce. And I spoke with my therapist about it as well. So, if for the people watching, create a plan, do your research, know your children, make it age appropriate. And, we sat with them together. I did all of the talking because at the time, my former spouse was not able to participate in this conversation in a way that would be healthy for my sons.
Mhm.
And so I said, we're getting a divorce. What that means is this. I explained, like, we're not going to live together, but we still love you. We still have everything in mind for you. We still work together to make sure you're safe and loved. And safe and loved was repeated over and over and over and over. You will always be safe. You will always be loved. What's happening
Because
with
that's what
mom?
they fear the most. Yeah.
Yes. And what's happening with mom and dad is not about you. You're
Yeah.
still a great human. You still do beautiful things. We still think it's amazing that you can do XYZ. And so this is why, meeting where your kids where they are and knowing the things that will
Right.
connect with them. And, it was the best that I could have ever imagined that conversation going, because they teared up. It's hard. And then at the end I said, and I played a little bit, but I was like, now you'll have 2 bedrooms and you'll have double all the things. And now you can decorate your new bedroom at dad's house. What do you think we should do to decorate? And they just took off on like, oh my gosh, we could do this at dad's house. And so, creating some excitement about the changes. Some people might say, well, that, I'm not sure how to do that with my kids. I needed to find a way to help them to connect and buy into the fact that things will change and it will be hard. And it was not a cakewalk the whole time. There were definitely bumps along that road, but they did not blame themselves. Elisabeth was saying, yes, a lot of kids do blame themselves. My sons did not ever share or have any moments where they felt like it was all my fault that you guys stopped being together.
That's because you talk to them, but a lot of parents do not know. They don't have a plan. They just get divorced. They hurt so badly that all they can think of is, of course, it makes sense. Save myself, because if you don't save yourself first, how can you be with
right.
your children?
Yep.
So, and my question to you is, your husband, he went along with this? I mean, obviously, you left the situation. I know that
Yes.
my ex-husband threatened to commit suicide and put that big guilt on me. I mean, and it was like, oh my God, I don't want to be responsible for that and whatnot. So, but
Yeah.
it wa-
So In my particular situation, when I sat with him and I explained to him where I was, I even wrote a list. I talked to my mom. I was like, what do I do? She's like, write a list of all the reasons why you came to this conclusion. And
Right.
the list was long, Lucy, like very long list. And he couldn't argue with me about anything on the list because for a decade I had said, our marriage is not good. I am not good.
Mm,
And we need to go to therapy. And he refused. He made the choice to not participate individually or as a couple. And I went alone because I had that guilt and I had that, like, I'm broken, I'm messing this
right.
up. And when I finally came to the conclusion that I could no longer be part of this relationship, he didn't have much recourse. He didn't agree with it, of course, and he tried really hard to convince me to go to therapy at that moment. And I thought, how unfair,
Yeah.
and fairness, I don't like to use that phrase because, fairness is not the right approach when your mindset, but it just felt like, man, I've been asking you for 10 years to work on this with me, to really listen, and you chose to not do it. And now when I am so broken that I need to go away and fix myself, you decide that, okay, I'm in now. I'm ready. I'm going to do it. So
Is
he
it
came, huh?
Do you think it's because men don't face it? I mean, I think I had a likely same situation. My ex-husband also, like, he didn't think anything was wrong, and I'm going, and yet it was like, oh my God.
He was the same. He's like, nothing's wrong, everything's fine. And there was a lot of gaslighting that happened, and me and a lot of my clients and the women I connect with are like, I had no idea that I didn't know what gaslighting was. And when I looked back at my marriage, I'm like, oh my God, he's been gaslighting me for how many years now? Like, it's not me, it's you. Like, nothing's wrong. I don't know what you're talking about. Everything's fine. It's all in your head, And I thought, oh my God. And carrying that burden of, like, it's me. I'm so
Yeah.
broken. So I I don't understand, and I agree with you, how he could think that nothing was wrong. I had written him letters and emails. I had been crystal clear with him. I think that he assumed that because we were married, I was stuck.
Oh, yeah.
Too bad. You got married. Marriage is hard. Sorry you're not feeling good about it. You'll be fine. It's all in your head.
Wow. Well, it's really difficult to know what the other person is thinking all the time, and usually, if there's divorce, there's a great lack of communication between two people. I have my Facebook user here. I don't know who that is. I think you would have to go
Hmm.
out and come back and give StreamYard a permission to use your name. But obviously, a father. What's your suggestion to fathers to mend their relationship with the children, knowing that they are all with their mother post divorce? And I don't know if that's true, but we can address that too.
So I don't think it's that different from what moms are doing, like, make a plan, speak with a professional. I worked with a therapist, I did research online, and I asked hard questions. I considered my son's ages and interests. I spoke the truth in an age appropriate way. I did not lie to them. I didn't tell them everything. That's not appropriate either. But you want to be honest and you want your kids to see you being authentic and who you really are. And they want to know the two things that my son's heard over and over: I love you and you are safe.
You're safe, right?
And when you do that, the connection can be mended. I love you and you're safe, and I'm going to do everything in my power to continue to be in your life and to do things that we love together. Mom and I are not together, but you and I are always together.
Right.
And that helped my sons to feel really safe. Now, we had already had a really healthy attachment prior to the divorce, so that matters too. But
Right.
that does not mean that you cannot start from wherever you are. You're never stuck. You can always heal.
Absolutely.
Dad can absolutely build healing and healthy relationships with their children, and they absolutely should. Dads are so incredibly
Oh my God.
important in children's lives. Like, it's not a choice to not be there, in my opinion.
What comes to mind as you're saying that, and I have goosebumps also. One of my mentors, Dean Graziosi, went through a divorce. He had been just stuck like you, numb in the marriage for years. And this was a man talking and knew that he had to separate, but was afraid to do so because of his children. And here's a man with lots of money. So he thought, I need help. I need help. He went online. He was looking for somebody help me, a coach or something. I never thought, my God, a divorce coach. I mean, who would have ever thought that you could find a
Right.
divorce, somebody to help you through? I mean, we're talking about the emotion here
Yeah.
of a divorce more than anything else. I mean, you have the lawyers that take care of the legal part,
Hmm.
and that in itself, you need help with the emotional part because it's
Yeah.
always, when it comes to money, it always becomes an ugly issue. But so I remember him saying it was so important to him because he didn't want the children to ever feel that they weren't safe and loved, just what you said. And so I thought that was so great. And he did find a coach, and it was that coach that helped him get through the divorce. And and I think what I got from that, the biggest I guess the biggest message to him was make friends with your wife.
Oh,
You
yes.
know,
That I would say that all day, every day. It's hard if the other person is not interested, if they are in denial, and with my clients at all of our sessions, you can only control you. You can only change you. You can only heal you. When you change, though,
right,
it changes the environment around you. It changes how you interact, which changes how people interact with you. So
right,
it's not hopeless, but yes, my former husband and I have a very healthy co-parenting relationship right now. We communicate regularly about our sons, and we work together to make sure, as always, 100% of the time, that our sons feel safe and loved. That is still the theme of all the things that happen with them. Now, my sons are a lot older now, and so they have a level of independence, which has been really beautiful. But if you can, it matters to have a good co-parenting relationship, and that your children know, no, my parents are not married, but they always work together to make sure that what I need is taken care of. And that is very healthy and very appropriate, and children will be very well adjusted, understanding that that is what happens.
right. Now, we've been talking about you as a mom, and I met you. I heard your story with Chica, who was interviewing you her second time around after interviewing 100 moms, after launching her program, after
Yeah.
her wonderful book, 100 self portraits, 100 dreams, and honoring moms globally. That moms is the life force. Actually, none of us would be here without moms. We have to admit that. And the fact is that moms do matter. But the most important thing about moms is that who is that woman behind that veil of mom? You know,
Right.
who is that? And that was her point in wanting to bring out that person. So we've been talking about you being a mom. Let's
Mm-hmm.
talk about you, the entrepreneur, the
Yeah.
coach, who is impacting people's lives, with obviously your knowledge, your expertise. Why did you decide, or how did you decide to become a coach? How did
Yeah.
that happen?
So I was pretty shattered after all of that went down, and I took a year to be single and to intentionally heal and read and like
Mhm.
be alone with myself. And um, it would have it that it was 2020, and so COVID happened, and I didn't have a choice but to really be alone.
Mhm.
That was divine intervention. I really needed the universe to do that for me, because I would have self-sabotaged big time.
Mhm.
And during that season of aloneness, women reached out to me, women who are married, who said, Liz, how did you do it? I
Uh-huh.
think that I need to do that. And I'm really scared. And the same stories, it's the same story all the time. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is happening to other people.
Right.
Um, And I realized I cannot heal and get these tools and become empowered and have all this like healing and not share it. I cannot be in a bubble with
Right.
this. Women are reaching out to me and I'm not healed yet. I'm still a hot mess. I still don't know what's happening. But I did something that is stirring up in them to want to know who they are and what they should do. And so I decided to get trained and certified. I'm like, this is something that has to happen. This is something that women need. We're not alone. You are not the only woman who is feeling guilty and ashamed and alone and isolated because you decided to get divorced. But we feel that way. We feel like we are.
Oh my God. So you went and got a certificate. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah, I got trained. So I have a transformational and mastery certification in coaching. And my niche is divorced women who feel this empty numbness. Like, I don't know who I am anymore. I lost myself when I was married. And in my personal case, and in some of the cases I worked with, it's like, I was so young when I got married that uh, I'm not really sure I knew who I was when I got married. I was still like discovering myself. And then that all got stopped and I was just like cut off. And now I just sit with women and we coach through like, you are more than just a mom, a
yeah.
wife, or former wife. Like, there are beautiful facets to who you are that you get to discover. And it has been such a beautiful and honoring space to work with these women. It really has been.
Wow, that is so great. I just love the work that you do. There are no books. There is no course to tell us how
Oh,
to
no.
marry or how to divorce. I mean, there probably are today. There are lots of books now today that have come out because they're necessary and people feel the need. And you, as a coach, felt the need to go get a certificate so that even though you had the experience and the expertise,
Right. Right.
you
So I
know.
took all of my pain and my healing process
Mhm.
and I got trained so that I could refine it and
Right.
make sure that I was really meeting women where they were. And it's beautiful and I love it so much. It has been so good. And the women that, come in end up being this brand new version of themselves that they could never have fathomed at the beginning of their process. It's wild.
It sounds like you empower them and so do you work with the children also of these divorced women?
I don't. I mostly work with the women, but when I work with them, in some of the cases,
Yeah.
we've worked through like how you show up
Okay.
is what your children see. And so
Right.
helping them to feel confident in those spaces because what they're modeling is what their children are observing. So, not directly with the children, but indirectly because moms, they're always worried about what their kids see, how they love their kids, how they show up for their kids. I'm a mom is one of the phrases that so many of us use and say. And, I do lives on my page as well. And I had one talking about like, what does that mean? And who are you besides your mom, being a mom too? Because one day your kids are going to grow up and
Yeah,
you are more than
really
just
true.
a mom,
Yeah, exactly. So how long have you been a coach now? May I ask that question?
Yeah, I've been coaching for 2 years.
Okay. All
Hmm.
right. And I understand that you have some programs.
I
Um,
do.
can we talk a little bit about how let's talk about the program and how you feel your program empowers women.
Sure. So right now I have two programs. I have the 90-day Launch Your Life transformation program.
Okay.
And what we end up doing in that program is peeling back layers of expectations, societals, religious, familial, and making discoveries about who women are. We do a lot of people pleasing, extinguishing.
Wow.
We get rid of a lot of the but I have to's and I should, which is a lot of the stories that we tell ourselves.
Right.
We work through fear. What are you really afraid of? And when we identify those limiting beliefs, we can make
Mhm.
discoveries about what the empowering beliefs can be.
Right.
And what ends up happening is that a lot of these women, have a transformation that's so deep that they almost don't remember being who they were when the program started. I had one client who had such a deep transformation. She said, I can't even remember
Wow.
being like that. And also, like, I can't even imagine in my body the embodiment of ever being like that version of me that started. And it was only halfway through the program at this point, and she had already
Wow.
had that deep rooted embodiment transformation from
Like
like,
an awakening.
it was phenomenal. And once the momentum starts, these women start really becoming conscious of their
Yes.
behaviors, of what they say, and the stories they tell themselves. And then we get to rewrite the stories together.
Wonderful, wonderful. So,
Mhm.
so that's your main. That's your main.
That's my main program. And then I have a group program. It's launching in April. It's called Love Me Again. And it's a community program. It's a group program because one of the biggest things my clients tell me is they feel completely isolated and alone. They feel like
Yep.
nobody understands, and they're so ashamed that they're afraid to talk about what they feel and the struggle, especially the women who leave, like, well, I
Yeah.
chose to leave, so now nobody wants to help me or understands why I'm sad. And so that group program is a way to empower each other. And then we work through identity and limiting beliefs. And we also work on fear and finances. Finances was one of the biggest things women shared. Like, I just don't know what to do about money. My husband was in charge, or my husband was the primary breadwinner, or I don't even know how to pay bills. And so we did a little bit of finance work as well in the group program.
Wow, how wonderful is because that is a big issue for women because
Mm-hmm.
let they've let their husbands always take care of that. I know I did, and all of a sudden I had to, and it's like, oh my God, and
Yeah.
I had to take care of it, and but I did. But you do what you have to. I mean, I wish I had the presence of mind to seek out a coach. I mean, I back then I just, of course, this is 20 plus years ago. There was no such thing as coaching. I mean, thank God we've come a long way,
Yeah.
and there are people just like you who are impacting really women's lives. Are you exclusively working with women at this point?
Yes, I only work with women at this point.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Yeah.
I know it's for men. I do know some men who are also coaches for men who are going through divorce, and I think that's appropriate also for.
Absolutely. Yes. And I did work briefly with a man who worked with divorced men, which I loved and also was so fascinated by because all of the women that I've worked with, and then, it's been a fair amount of women at this point who have the same story, which is
Right.
he didn't understand why I thought the marriage wasn't working. Like, they don't get it. And I thought, where are the men who are like, hey, like you said, your mentor? I'm curious about that side of it as well. I haven't had the opportunity to work with him again, but men need it too. Like, divorce is hard, it hurts, it's difficult, no matter who is the one that's asking for it. Having a coach to support you and walk alongside you and ask you hard questions and help you peel back
Right.
layers so you can release expectations is so incredibly powerful and healing, and necessary, I think.
Absolutely, because a good coach will not tell you what to do, but
Oh no.
he or she will bring it out of you. And I do believe
Yeah.
that coaching for any part of your life
Right.
is really important. And then the other thing that you mentioned, because that's what you're doing, is the community. The community is so important because of support. Knowing that you're not all alone is so very important. Michelle, who's from France, just has come in and she says women now have the possibility to allow themselves to seek for help and support, whatever the subject. And that's true.
Mm-hmm.
So important to express what is in our self-talk, which wastes so much of life and joy, energy from our life. You are doing a great job, Elisabeth Soto-Baez. Congratulations. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you. Yes, the self-talk. So this month, I do Thursday Night Live with Liz, so you guys can come watch me tonight.
Okay.
And I'm so sorry, my light is automatic. And this month's series is the stories we tell ourselves. And
Right.
so many of us tell ourselves these crazy stories about our lives and don't
Right.
understand why we remain stuck. And the women that I've worked with, I'm a mom, I can't afford it, I don't have time, I'm just not good enough. I mean, we can go on and on with the
Right.
stories women tell themselves. And so I appreciate Michelle saying that, because it is an energy drain. It does steal our
Right.
actual life.
Absolutely
And
does.
so my program and my work has been around rewriting all those stories.
So I just want to thank you very much
Yeah.
for coming here, for your support of and you're empowering other women to get through the divorce and to come out winning on the other side, their children too, and even the husband, you
Yep.
know. So it's a hard struggle for anybody who has to go through it. I just want to let you know, of course, community is always important. And I work with the community here in my community. I want the women and men in my group to know that they have knowledge, they have an experience, they have an
Yes.
expertise, and to use that, because they can impact other people's lives. And
100%.
so, I know that we have a program that's being launched on January 14th for people to, it's really for them to sell their course or their coach online organically. So that's what that's all about. So in the tickler below, I have 3 ways that people can contact you: by going to your website, and your website is www.launchyourlifecoaching.com, or on Instagram, all right,
Mm-hmm.
which is the robot launch period, your period, life period coaching, or
Yes.
by email, Elisabeth at launchyourlifecoaching.com.
That is right. That is right.
And what I will do after this interview, I'll put all that information in the comment below. Is there anything that you'd like to say to the audience before we end the
Oh, yeah. Oh, wow. There's so many things. I guess the biggest thing, for the women that are watching, like, you are never stuck. There is always an
right,
opportunity. Your pain is your greatest gift if you choose it to be. And healing is the first step. And beautiful things wait on the other side of healing. And wholeness is absolutely your birthright. So get the help that you need. It is available. I'd love to chat with you.
thank you, thank you, thank you. And I want to thank my audience for being here. It's been great to interact with you. I love interacting with these people online. And thank you for your many hearts. We love hearts. And again, Elisabeth, thank you for your time and for the
Yes.
work that you do with
Thank you.
women, empowering them.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Lucy, for having me today. It's been a
So
pleasure.
thank you. And thank you, everybody else. And we'll see you next week for another awesome weekly interview with Lucy and her awesome guests. Bye for now.